That's a developing area. So the only thing is, Elizabeth, the format is something that I'm putting you on the spot. You have to tell us about the conference first, then we will move forward.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. So happy to be here. And this World Mediators Conference, I truly believe is really beneficial for mediators to learn from each other and better structure their interventions. Mediation is one of the oldest and most common conflict resolution mechanisms. And at the same time, it is a field that keeps growing. And that is why we're in the search for innovative mediation strategies. And when mediation is practiced correctly, it can better help to manage or settle a conflict. And managing conflicts, including international ones, has become a priority on the global agenda. So we're aware that the devastating consequences of conflict in an increasingly globalizing world order cannot be ignored. And that's what we're doing here. We're not ignoring everything that is currently going on. And we're also aware that mediation is a peaceful way to manage conflicts. The practice and process of mediation revolves to a large extent around mediators' choice of strategic behaviors. Therefore, this World Mediators Conference is a great tool beneficial for improving mediation strategies. Through this conference, you are actually, Mediator Vikram, you're promoting respectful intercultural understanding, which is really important because mediation is not just a single method. It is more likely a conglomerate of diverse competencies and skills. And this conference can be helpful for finding options for creating dialogue in order to fix or at least optimize something that is already out of balance. So, Mediator Vikram, I really believe that you are doing an excellent job raising awareness towards the mediation field by encouraging mediators around the world to communicate knowledge that may actually assist in creating enduring solutions to conflicts and tensions created by human interactions. You are actually helping mediators to become more mindful, which is a great advantage for mediation practice. Besides, in a conference like this one, we're pretty much peer visionaries exchanging and optimizing our skills in very profound ways. And as we all know, conflicts are different, and targeting on the same solution for different problems eventually backfires because of several reasons, such as cultural differences, social differences, and different ways of communication, just to name a few. After all, mediators have the capability of adapting their skills to the conflict and its parties. Mediators can master the mediation techniques to better interpret complex subjectivity of any ongoing conflicts. Also, participating mediators, as many as we have seen in this conference, that it has been a great variety of mediators from all over the world, which is really amazing to me that you have been able to put this all together. And this can improve our level of not only self-awareness, but our awareness, which is really essential for becoming a successful and effective mediator. This conference is important because of the potential of mediation to constitute a constructive and adaptive response to conflicts and deep changes. This conference is for sure a way of delivering the message of peace across all nations. So thank you for organizing these events. And I invite everyone to watch on YouTube all the different sessions that have already been recorded with wonderful topics to learn from. And I would also like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of this conference. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. What you said, of course, I could never have said it as well as you did. So it's really nice that, but that the idea was to understand, is it actually reaching out? Are people actually benefiting from it? So that's why hearing from you sounds so nice, that there is at least something happening somewhere which people are in some way benefiting from. So that's really nice of you. And of course, this is session number 80. So we've got 80 sessions up there on YouTube. There's enough to watch, enough to watch.
Yes. So a lot to learn from, a lot of people to learn from, a lot of mediators to share their knowledge. It's just wonderful.
But the important thing, Elizabeth, is everything okay at home? That's something which...
Yep. Yes, everything is okay home right now. Thank you so much for asking.
Perfect. So now, unmet expectations and mediation, your topic, take it where you want. I'll come in if you want me to come in, whenever. Yeah, please.
Thank you so much. Well, before I start the topic, just a little bit about myself, about my background. So, well, my name is Lizyvette Ramos, and I was born in Venezuela. I came to live to the US right after I graduated from high school. I went to college in Florida, then I went back to Venezuela a few years later, completed a law school. After I graduated with my law degree, I came back to the US and have been here since then. My educational background includes a bachelor in psychology, also a master's in forensic psychology. Then I became a Florida Supreme Court certified family mediator. And currently I am enrolled in a PhD program in conflict analysis and resolution, for which I am almost done with my classes, and I am ready to start my dissertation process. So far, getting ready and acquiring more knowledge about the mediation and conflict resolution practice. Mediation is actually a passion for me, and I'm trying to acquire as much knowledge and skills as I can so that I can better help people. Reason why I'm participating in this conference. I love the fact that the inaugural speech was given by Ken Cloke. I hugely admire his work, and I have a collection of his books, as you know, and I have already been reading them. He has so much knowledge, so much experience. He portrays so much relevant information on all his books that I can't have enough of them. His books actually get to the core of the practice of mediation. And he manifests the importance of taking the conflicted parties' hearts into account during the mediation process. Well, we could have another conference just to discuss the topics that he covers in his books. So I'm going to move on with my topic for today, which is unmet expectations and mediation. So I will start by saying that the role of unmet expectations in conflict and the need for mediators to determine the influence of unmet expectations on the ongoing conflict. Unmet expectations have a powerful role in defining how conflict is perceived. And when unmet expectations are left unexamined, they will continue to have a detrimental impact on the conflict. Therefore, a key part of the process of addressing a conflict with the conflicted parties is to examine their unmet expectations and how they're impacting the relationship. First, we need to know that an expectation is defined as a belief that something will happen. It is important to know that it's normal to have expectations. For example, I can have the expectation that the mail will be delivered today. So that's what I expect. That's what I believe is going to happen. Expectations are basically based on life experiences. That's why they're different for everyone. And when expectations are not met, there is a sense that something is not right, which can result in a sense of frustration or a feeling of being disrespected or being disregarded. It can make people wonder, why is someone behaving in a way different from what was expected? So again, this is a source of conflict, and this brings and creates a lot of conflict. So we know that unmet expectations can lead to conflict. So much can happen. For instance, someone may have hoped that another person will have said or done something that reflects their care and concern for them. Maybe someone felt excluded from taking a decision. Maybe someone didn't provide the expected support, and so on. We must just keep in mind that these and many other examples of having expectations work both ways, of course. And we could have let someone else down in some way too. So it's not like someone supposed to do something and they don't do it. It can also be the other way around. And when it happens either way, it can result in conflict. I don't think it's easy to identify expectations until people actually realize they have not been met. After experiencing hurt or disappointment is when the unmet expectations may become clear, but then the feelings people have about what occurred can be pervasive and challenging to manage when the conflict evolves. So everything starts with these unmet expectations, and if we don't take care of them, then they keep escalating, and the negative feelings, the frustration can also keep escalating. So one of the best ways to overcome conflicts is to find out their source. And this must include for mediators to find out whether unmet expectations are playing a role in the conflict. I believe this is important because unmet expectations can affect the quality of any relationship. Even the most loving couples, friends, or family members face conflicts in their lives that have been caused by unmet expectations. Unmet expectations may generate a clash between individuals. We must know that it is common for people to have different expectations because they have not only different life experiences, but also different tendencies, desires, fears, challenges, or different upbringing. That will make it different. And we need to keep in mind that conflicts never start from nowhere, and conflict builds up over time. The key is to determine the source of the conflict and whether the source has to do with unmet expectations. Differences between individuals can shape their expectations, may reveal hidden prejudices, bias, stereotypes, or discrimination. In his book, The Dance of the Opposites by Ken Cloke, he emphasizes that conflicts carrying these negative attitudes bring intense emotions that may appear to be of secondary importance, but they must be addressed. Therefore, it is important for mediators to have awareness and knowledge of strategies for properly responding to negative emotions and attitudes in order to successfully solve emotionally charged conflicts, such as the ones involving prejudice, bias, stereotyping, or discrimination. Different groups may have different and conflicted interests, Moreover, oppositional interests may be conscious or they may be subconscious. Members of specific groups maintain specific positions, which results in specific expectations. Behaviors are generally ramifications of either preservation or change. Another important point to cover is that different beliefs bring different expectations. And these include expectations of clients, it can be expectations of attorneys, or it can be the expectations of the mediators themselves. Expectations play a great role in the mediation process, and met expectations can quickly lead to impasse. When expectations are addressed from the beginning, the mediation process can follow a different path. Reason why psychological skills are helpful for mediators to be able to identify those expectations that can shape the mediation process. Expectations can be reframed without trivializing them. And please feel free to interrupt if you have any
perfect.
questions or any comments.
I'm listening.
Additionally, mediators are not immune to having their own expectations during the mediation process. The conflicted parties, differences or behaviors may influence the mediator's position. Mediators must have the capacity to bring to consciousness those expectations and remain alert on how they can negatively influence the mediation process. We can undoubtedly say that it can make a difference when it is determined during mediation sessions whether the conflict is somehow related to unmet expectations. A number of questions can be used during the mediation session to try to get to the source of those expectations and unmet expectations. As mediators, we can ask questions such as, was the other person aware of the expectation? Did the other person share their expectation? Was it in the power of the other person to meet the expectation? Was it in the other person's best interest to meet that expectation? So questions like these can actually reveal the scope and the harm caused by unmet expectations. Also, there are some steps that mediators may put into practice during mediation sessions to deal with conflict related to unmet expectations. These steps were explained in an article published by Ronit Barras called The Devastating Relationships Between Expectations and Conflicts. The step one would be asking the conflicted parties to list or name their conflicts. Basically, this means asking the parties to take all the things that they consider conflict and write them down on a piece of paper. Remind the parties that everything that does not happen the way they want it to happen and everything that creates an uncomfortable feeling is actually a conflict. Writing down the conflicts may ease the process of finding patterns in a written list. And this first step creates awareness, which is essential for any change to actually take place. The step two will be asking the parties what were their expectations. So then the parties can write down the unmet expectations, because every conflict starts when reality is different from our expectations. It is essential to find them and list them to become aware of them. It is important to remind the parties that this is an exercise to find out what they expected with no labels and no values. This is not about judging or about justifying themselves. There are so many scenarios in which people may experience unmet expectations. For example, if someone said, "You are selfish," and that created a conflict, it could be because the expectation was that the other person would be kind and only say nice things. If someone took another person's wallet and that person is upset, it may mean that such individual expected the other person to respect their belongings and not take things from them without permission. So the best way to find the expectations is to complete the sentence. I am angry or disappointed or upset or defensive because. Everything that comes after because is the expectation that something be different from what it is in reality. Then the third step will be a reality check. Can everyone fulfill each other's expectations 100% of the time? For example, have I never told anyone else that they were selfish? I probably have. Remember, in order to reasonably expect another person to be perfect, you must prove that perfection is possible. And these steps requires honesty, and it also requires courage. In a conflict between two people, it is always easy to see the other's faults, and it's a lot harder to realize that we are doing the exact same thing. This is because from our point of view, we are always right. Then the last step, step 4, is about changing those expectations. So unmet expectations are the source of pretty much all suffering. The only expectation that will make us happy is that things be just the way they are. Many people think that changing expectations can be devastating because they equate it to losing all hope. But there is a huge difference between the two. Hope is about having a great future and comes from believing in good. It is healthy for us because we do not judge the past or our current situation. We only concentrate on having potential positive future. So this is what hope is about. Then high expectations, on the other hand, are like setting yourself up for disappointment. They create dependency and come with great suffering and pain. Shakespeare said that expectation is the root of all heartache, and I believe he was right. As soon as we understand that the suffering comes from within, we have the power to change our life and find happiness. The only person we can express our expectations from is ourselves. Even then, it is better to strive for something than to just expect something. Striving makes us take action, while expectation causes disappointment when it is not met. Striving means we accept that we are human and forgive ourselves for not being able to do something 100% of the time. It is the understanding that with every step we take, we move forward, we learn, and we evolve. so there is nothing to be upset about. Striving for something includes kindness towards ourselves, whereas expectations are a form of self-cruelty. Therefore, you'll be more reasonable to let go of your expectations and embrace the people in your life. Let me also talk about some information that I got from an article from Sarah Fenson, where she approaches the topic of when expectations cause conflict. She explains that there can be conflict between what we expect and the actual circumstances. If you don't resolve such conflict between your expectations and reality, you'll spend time and energy anguishing about it. Fenson provides recommendations that serve as first aid for unrealistic expectations. When the parties' expectations are clashing with what is real, the mediator can invite them to pause and assess what they can control and what they may have to accept. There are a few tips that mediators may apply and help the parties to observe and process external information and manage internal conflicts that might occur. First, recommend the parties to take a pause. As soon as they feel the undertow caused by expectations colliding with reality, they can take a few minutes to do something that helps them remain calm and move into a mindful assessment mode. Such activities may include meditating, going for a walk, or just taking a few deep breaths. Then, the mediator can motivate the parties to assess what's going on. Let the parties know that they are capable of reducing the internal conflict down to its actual reason. The mediator can ask the parties, for example, how are your perceptions different from the external cues that you are receiving? Or what factors or ideas are conflicting? Or what caused the conflict? Why are you reacting to the external information in this way? Or just why do you expect more or something different than reality is delivering for you? It is important not to leave this stage until the mediator is confident that the parties have pinpointed the reasons for the conflict. After that, the mediator can assist the parties in determining what is their responsibility and what is under their control. The goal here is to identify the elements that are the responsibility or in their sphere of influence, at least. The mediator may ask, for example, are you really responsible for someone else's reaction? Or have you avoided a responsibility that was required to meet your expectation? Then the mediator can ask the parties to concentrate their energy on things they can actually change. For many people, adopting a live and let live mentality is difficult, particularly in areas of behavior that challenge core beliefs and values. If someone places a high value on personality or on personal responsibility, for example, they will likely get frustrated when someone's behavior seems irresponsible or inconsiderate. Even in these tough scenarios, it is often best to use their energy and response to situations where it can truly help. The need to be right can have everyone conform their belief system to spend a lot of energy and create a lot of stress. It is usually better to be happy than to be right. Additionally, the mediator can assist the parties with planning and taking appropriate action. One potential remedy for aligning expectations with reality is to plan and take action based on thoughtful assessment. The parties can practice activities that will help them alleviate their internal conflict by aligning their expectations with what is realistically achievable. The first action must be a mechanism for cleaning out their mind of the perception that they can control what they actually can't. Basically, the parties need to snap themselves into reality. They must concentrate on what they can realistically change instead of dwelling on what is not the responsibility or under their control. So the mediation tactics that are used depend on the dispute sources. Therefore, mediators adapt their activities to different dispute circumstances. It is possible for the mediator to be confronted with highly unrealistic expectations from one or both parties. Then the mediator may be faced with the need to tell the parties their position is unrealistic, and the mediator may attempt to engage the parties into modifying their unrealistic expectations. So the mediator can really play a big role in helping and guiding the parties to realize which are their unmet expectations. Unmet expectations can cause enormous, like huge psychological pressure called reality shock, which can be the main source of negative emotions. The reality shock that comes from unmet expectations can bring a sense of inner trauma to the individual, such as frustration, self-doubt, insomnia, and any other negative emotional experience. This phenomenon has become a key obstacle to adapting to the overall emotional feeling that individuals have. Unmet expectations can influence people's attitudes. Indeed, high unmet expectations lead to low relationship satisfaction. Any relationship satisfaction may be determined by a discrepancy between the expectations and the actual experiences. Unmet expectation can be negatively related with the individual's affection and their coping capacity. Another factor relevant to expectations is that they may depend on whether people belong to an individualistic or collectivistic culture. We know that collectivistic and individualistic cultures are concerned with how individuals in a society prioritize and they manage their relationships and their goals. Collectivistic cultures prioritize solidarity over individual goals, while individualistic cultures emphasize human independence and freedom. Therefore, depending on which culture someone belongs to, they may have different expectations from each other. So that's basically what I have in relation to unmet expectations. If you would like, I can go a little further and explain the difference between expectations, assumptions, and perceptions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we can see how they are not the same, and expectations, assumptions, and perceptions. When we talk about assumptions, we can see that they're defined as a thing that is assumed to be true. It is normal to make assumptions in our daily lives. We need to, as we do not have the time to check out all the assumptions we make in a day. For example, that the mail we see was indeed delivered by the mail person, that a classroom has been booked when a class is scheduled, that our doctor has the credentials to be able to treat us. So those are assumptions that we may have on a daily routine. When we make assumptions about others' intentions, reasons for action, or their understanding of the situation, we may be laying a flawed foundation for our understanding of that relationship. Identifying and checking out our assumptions and giving the other person an opportunity to identify and check out their assumptions is crucial to developing a common understanding of the problem. So how do you check out an assumption? You can ask direct questions such as, what do you want to achieve when you did that? Or what information were you given about what the other party's role will be? Or what is your understanding of any specific task? Then perceptions, on the other hand, are defined as a way of regarding, understanding, or interpreting something. Perception is fundamentally individual to each person. While some people may share a largely common perception of an event, there will always be some subtle differences. Often people will have divergent perceptions of what occurred based on their assumptions, expectations, experience, and history. Being open to understanding how others have perceived the conflict and to adjusting our own perception when new information is received is key to managing conflict with others. So this is what I have regarding to this topic. If you have any comments or any questions.
I'm going to look, Elizabeth, when you said unmet expectations and mediation, we have to look at it from a broader perspective. Unmet expectations, this is between the parties. What about unmet expectations from the mediator or of the mediator or from the process, from the settlement, all those? So you have to take care of everything because you made a wide topic. So you'll have to cover all of them.
Yes, that's true. It's pretty wide. And what is more important about it, whether the unmet expectations are coming from the mediator or the parties or the attorneys, is to try to make it conscious. We need to try to bring it to consciousness and make that person be aware of those expectations, because if they're hidden, there is no way to deal with them. So what is really important, especially when they are related to bias or prejudice, is really important to get to that root, to that source, to be able to work out those differences during the mediation process. So it is broad and is not easy because everyone involved can have their own expectations, and everyone involved needs to be aware of each other's expectations. And of course, to get to this, there needs to be clear communication, which is not always easy. So I think we need to give it the importance that needs to be given and actually consciously work on these issues.
Yeah. So one, you maybe cover expectations of the mediator and expectations from the mediator. Anything that you want to talk about in general, what are the expectations from mediators, of mediators?
There can be a wide range and a wide scopes of expectations, but just a simple expectation as we're going to reach a settlement today in 2 hours, no matter what, that can be an expectation from the mediator. That expectation can influence the parties because depending on how the mediator approaches the mediation can actually affect their attitude, their actions, their behavior, their feelings, everything. So we can just say, no, this is what I need to do today. This is my job. My expectation is for them to get to an agreement today. It has to be done. Again, we need to be aware of that, how that is influencing the parties during the process.
Absolutely. And expectations from the mediator?
Expectations from the mediator will be approaching, again, it can basically be the same expectation from any of the sides. The ones that concern me more are the ones probably related to stereotyping or bias. Let's say it is a male mediator and he's approaching the parties. He may be biased or he may be expecting the male party to be right and the female party to be wrong about what they're saying. So if the mediator already have those expectations to get specific answers from each party, then it can really negatively influence the mediation process. And again, this can vary by life experiences, by culture, by traditions, values, beliefs. There is so much that comes together to determine everyone's expectations. The point is that it can hugely negatively impact the mediation process.
Elizabeth, also you have to look at it from the neutrality perspective, because all the time when mediation is discussed and neutrality is used with it, is that an expectation that parties should have? And how do we deal with that? Because that is an area of a lot of debate.
It is actually an expectation, yes, from the parties. And I don't think there is a perfect mediation. So for someone to be perfectly neutral, we may say is impossible, but I think we have the responsibility to be as close to neutral as possible. And I think it is important to also remind the parties at the beginning of the mediation session that that is your role and those are your goals as the mediator, to be neutral during the session. However, if any of the parties feel at any time during the mediation process that the mediator is not being neutral or is not treating them equally, just remind them that it's okay to bring that to the mediator's attention, because sometimes, again, it can be unconscious, it can be subconscious that the mediator is not acting in a neutral way. So it's important for the parties to know that they can let the mediator know if they feel he or she is not acting in a neutral way. But I think it's our responsibility to, as much as possible, to try to be neutral. And if we don't feel we are, we need to work on it. And we need to become aware of what's going on so that if that happens, to prevent that from happening again. But for sure, that is huge, the neutrality issue during a mediation.
Yeah, because you look, you've created an expectation there, because obviously every time that word is used, and when you've created an expectation, and whether it is a realistic expectation or not, and whether it is actually required or not, I mean, that also that aspect of it, how does it really affect parties? Does it affect the process and all that? I mean, that's not a discussion that parties are going to have, or I mean, they're not, that academic discussion definitely that they're not part of. So really to deal with that part and the expectation that's been created, and I'll tell you this, the effect of it on the other side is that if there is an allegation or something, just a fact they're saying that, look, the person was not neutral. That by itself, to be able to get out of a settlement agreement for that reason, I mean, those are the issues that come up. I don't know how you look at that.
It can easily bring to impasse. Yes, just for not being neutral during the mediation process.
Because look, in the discussion with Bernie Mayer in the conference itself, I was showing him we have the Singapore Convention, and in that, one of the grounds for refusal of enforcement is that the standards of the, I'll give you the exact words because this is very precise. We have to use that. The applicable standards, I'm not reading right now, I'm opening that page of the Singapore Convention, but the applicable the standards applicable to a mediator. Now, this is where I was asking him that if is neutrality and is standard applicable to a mediator or not? And if it is, does it create a big problem in just a party saying, and he was also saying that you can, for any reason, say, person was not neutral because they did this, they did that, they spoke to this person, like that, whatever. So are we creating for ourselves a trap? Obviously, his neutrality trap is a different trap, but are we creating a trap there from that expectation of the
Yes,
parties? Yeah.
yes, that's true. And I think what is important is for the parties not to feel threatened or from the mediator. It's not okay for them not to feel comfortable during the mediation process. So they may be right, they may be wrong, because it's very subjective. So it pretty much depends on their history, on their past experiences. So maybe they feel a way that we don't agree with, but still as mediators, we need to respect that and try to work it out to make them feel comfortable with the mediation process.
Because the thing is that there are, of course, mediation is, of course, a word used and say, okay, this is a mediation. Now, parties themselves obviously don't know much about the process. It's something that they're going to be told about the process and all. Now, of course, in some parts of the world, the expectation is that the mediator will tell them what to do. Okay, so that's an expectation, which might be unmet in certain situations, in certain places. So how do you deal with that?
The best way to deal with that is to clear communication. So every time we start a mediation session, we need to make the parties aware what our role is, so that if they had any expectations before the mediation sessions, at least it can change by then. But yes, that can happen, that they can expect. I mean, we're just mediation, we're not judges, we're not arbiters, we cannot take or make decisions for them. At least that's the way we're taught and what our responsibility is. So we need to make them aware, this is our role, this is how I will guide you, I will assist you, I will answer your questions. However, I'm not going to make the decisions for you. It needs to be, if they still have any doubts, we need to explain it to them before the mediation process, just to avoid those clashes and expectations that, yes, we're going to decide for them and tell them what to do.
Yeah, because let me tell you, because some parts of the world, definitely it's evaluative. Some purists think that it has to be totally facilitative. And supposing the parties come and say, look, we expect you to tell us, suggest. And would you be a purist enough if you who are in that process says, oh no, I will not suggest, and you will walk away from that as a mediator? Or would you still, being the having the expectation of a party, work with the process?
I wouldn't walk away from it, because they're already willing to work on that. Of course, it's my job to try to help them find a solution. I wouldn't just tell them, okay, that's fine. This is what you need to do. I will decide for you. But I can tell them, we can work on this together. It's really, they know themselves better than I know them. They know their history, they know their conflict, they know their issues, they know their goals and their interests, and how the solution can actually be better for them. Because even if I said, yes, I'm going to make a decision for you, it may not work out for them. I'm just giving them a general decision, a standard maybe, that might not be helpful, because every mediation is unique. And what makes them unique is that those parties have different goals, different interests, different expectations. So I would just tell them, we can work on this together. I can guide you through the process step by step. We just need your input to be able to know the path to go. I cannot tell you what to do if that's not the best solution for your situation. And they are the better ones to be able to figure out what's best for them.
Well, I'm just looking from the expectation point of view, that the fact that this kind of a thing maybe comes up much later in the mediation. You going through the, I mean, they're not talking about it. I mean, they're not saying that this is my expectation from it, or this is our expectation from it. You've gone through the process and you reached a point when suddenly you find out that's the expectation. And I'm just thinking, look, I'm of course not in your particular case, so how you look at it. I just sometimes feel that this whole thing, that people have tied their own hands, mediators have tied their own hands in relation to mediation. I have a bit of an issue with that, because I mean, that's something which is, you're here to assist. Are you supposed to, at what point do you first of all tie your hands? When do you say, okay, this is something I don't go beyond? That part of it, I just have to, I mean, I have an issue with mediators with that understanding. I don't know what your feeling on that is.
Yes, again, I'll keep reminding them that I'll guide them and I will assist them. However, their solutions has to come from them. The core of the solution, it has to be adjusted to what the parties
What
want.
I'm trying to say is, up till what point will you play into their expectations? I want to know that. They reach a point, not a problem. You've told them this is yours. You have to, it has to be your session. No, you have to, Lizyvette, you have to tell us what to do in this situation. You decide for us. For a moment, I'm just using those words. What are you going to be doing? What would you do?
I will go back and forth, back and forth. Again, my role is to guide you. I won't tell you what to do. However, we can keep discussing what your common interests are, and for sure you can work it out if you make an effort and make a decision.
Oh, Lizyvette, now it's at that point. This is at that point of the mediation. You have to decide for us, otherwise we're walking off. Now what do you do? Just I mean,
Let's
this
keep
is a
working.
I'm just
Let's keep working on it.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm just thinking that, are you supposed to
Would you
create?
tell them what to do?
I mean, look, I'm just thinking that, look, for me, obviously, I play an active role, so I have no problem with those things. You're part of them. I mean, for me, it's, you're part of the process, and you're all working together to reach somewhere. And so I don't create that kind of, I don't have those barriers. I don't personally have those barriers. People I do hear talking about these barriers for them. It's, look, finally, you're working with people, and people have expectations, like you said. People have expectations, and is it realistic? I think they're realistic expectations. You're sitting with a human being, and when you're sitting with human beings, you want to know, or you want to ask, or you want people to tell you what to do. It's a normal thing, which is normal. So in human to human interaction, to create an unnatural stand that, look, I'm going to take you to the edge of the cliff, and not beyond that, I will not be with you or whatever, and I'll let you go, I'll let you lose. I know you'll have to hold their hand up till you can. Well, I'm just broadly, if it is it connected to your other topic? I think to a certain extent it is. That's why I'm
Yes,
talking about it.
it is. It's completely connected.
Okay, so perfect. So from the perspective of the expectations of the parties from the mediator, you have some lines you'll draw there. You're saying that there'll be some lines you'll
Correct.
draw there. So
Yes.
perfectly all right. But is it
Mhm.
because that's the way you've been trained, or is it because you feel that, I don't know, how does that work?
It goes both ways. It because it's our responsibility. We have also been trained to follow ethical norms that we also must follow during the process. And regardless of the parties' expectations, I think we need to maintain and be clear of our role and our responsibilities during the mediation process. So I'm sure it will be based on what we have been trained. But besides, I really feel the decision needs to be taken by the parties. Again,
Yeah, yeah.
they are the ones who has to deal in the future with whatever solution they have taken. So it has to come from them. It cannot be, oh, see, I told you we took this decision. It's the mediator's fault. That person was the one who told us this is what we needed to know. No, it is their responsibility.
Let me tell you, Elizabeth, people might say you decide for us. No one takes your decision. They take their own decisions. Always, it's just a way of getting something out from people. So to say that they actually did it because you told them to do it, it doesn't work that way. Yes, they can. They might later look back and want to blame someone because everyone wants someone to blame. But people take
Mediator
their own
fault.
decision. Yeah. But finally, it's their settlement. It's yours. That is the word. That is the aspect that we have to explain. That look, this is that is your decision. What you would want to decide in a certain situation, or what your decision something is just a thought process that you're putting out. That part, that's a clear. I mean, just use that word decide. I think is what kind of creates that problem with mediators, because the word decide should never come up in the process at all from the mediators. So I think we'll have to just play on the words part of it. But what about unmet expectations from the settlement?
From the settlement, well, that can take a huge scope too. Unmet expectations. It can be unmet expectations right during the settlement, because sometimes the parties may feel that they're not really satisfied with the decision taken, but at the same time, they may feel it's the right thing to do, or they are doing it because of a specific reason. Let's say a child custody case. Uh, Maybe the parents are not happy with their own decisions, but maybe they are taking those decisions because of the best interest of the child. So maybe they had an expectation for the settlement and they didn't get to that, but there was a good reason behind it. So maybe they're not satisfied. It can also happen that they seem to be satisfied, or they reach what they expected for the settlement. And maybe after they realize that, oh no, this is not what I wanted, or now I have different expectations, and this now we need another change. So even if they reach a settlement, anything can happen in the future. It can be a near future or far future, that they find other unmet expectations, and then they have to deal with those. So it can vary.
Because I don't know whether this goes back to again the neutrality discussion. That is someone, of course, that's not the expectation from the settlement, because of certain aspects, which could be anything. Say the power imbalances. Now in a power imbalance situation, and the the party says, okay, maybe in this situation I have no way out, and then does the, I mean, does the mediator have any role to play to be able to work on it in any other way at the end, if that's the kind of settlement that's coming through, and the party is just pushed into that position in that point of time, because there could be various factors. I'm not getting any factors because could be lots of factors. Are you going to be looking at that at all and considering that situation and the parties being in a way pushed into a certain settlement? That was not the expectation, but from the settlement, yes, but due to various factors, circumstances, whatever.
So do you mean like in order for them to meet their expectations, whether they should be pushed into making that decision? Or?
No, I'm looking at it more from that whole, I mean, as a process or as the balance, like I said, in a power imbalance situation, that balance, does the mediator, or in your case, would you be looking at a more active role to try and is in some way, look, if it'll be various, look, I'm talking about mediation in a general way. It could be various kinds of mediation. I mean, it might not be certain, maybe not in a family mediation. This situation could happen in a community mediation. A community is being affected. Anywhere, I'm not giving any, because these are things which come up in various places. But in that case, how much of an active role, or where does the role end of a mediator? Have you looked at that?
Well, in general, the role of the mediator, I believe it should be to work on each case as unique as they are. We can have some cases that in a few hours you can help the parties, assist them during the mediation process, and right there you get an answer, or you get a solution, you get a settlement. Usually that works out that way when the parties' expectations are not too far from each other. Then it is our role to keep working with the parties when there is a bigger discrepancy between their expectations. And then that's the role of the mediator to dig deeper into what caused the conflict, the source, the root of the conflict, and see what is actually going on. But then that requires more attention, more skills, maybe more capability from the mediator to be able to deal with those issues, because you pretty much don't know what you can find after you open that box and you get in there and all those negative emotions keep coming out. I think it's your role to work on that, to help the parties actually manage that conflict. But it requires more work and more energy, more time, so that the mediator can actually help the parties deal with those issues.
Well, I'm telling you, because I keep talking about value-based negotiations and humanistic approach and all. So I'm looking at it from that perspective of the mediator. Would that be something that you would bring in to try and balance things out? Would you work on that, or we just, okay, parties are settling it, they're doing it. I don't need to get into that. So how much of a, like, again, the same thing, where do you put that barrier and say this is beyond what I have to do? They're agreeing, whatever the other person's situation might be, I'm not going to get into that. So I think that's where, again, I would think that, I mean, look, I don't read books, so I haven't read Neutrality Trap that Bernie Mayer has written, but I think that's the kind of idea that he's trying to put across there also. So that part of it, I think that's where I'm coming from. So I don't know what you think about that.
I'll say I'll go as far as I can, and I have the ability to handle the ongoing situation. It can be a complex conflict. But again, I'll also go as far as I feel that the parties are actually willing to work on it, because I don't think they should be pressured into making any type of decision. So I believe there have to be some boundaries and more clear expectations and clear communication for sure with the parties. But there have to be some boundaries as far as how far to go.
So yeah, because I think this is one area I would like to, of course, explore more with people, because, like I said, I have that approach as part of what I do. So that aspect kind of, I don't know, I mean, how you bring it in, that's your way of doing it. I mean, I'm just saying, but that aspect of getting down to people reaching into their heart, into their soul. Well, you heard me talk about heart, soul, spirituality,
Yes.
connecting those aspects into the mediation, and the expectation from a mediator. Because look, we've, maybe there is a certain, like I keep saying, this box of mediation which goes around. For a moment, let's just leave that aside. The role of mediators, and maybe traditionally, so maybe we'll have to look into the indigenous communities. What is the expectation from a mediator in those places? What has been the role also? So I think that part of it, I think we need, I feel that it has to be a larger discussion on that, and let's not put it as, okay, this is it, this is, we don't go beyond this kind of thing. So I don't know.
I completely agree. And again, I think that's one of the great benefits of these events, this conference, as you are working together, because the same way that we deal with something in a culture, it can have a different approach from another culture that we're not aware of. So in order to deal with so many complex issues and conflicts that are going on right now, that we see conflict keep escalating, I think the best way to approach it is actually working together, learning from each other, and taking strategies from each other, because every conflict is unique, and we may try to guide or help the parties in a way, but maybe what if we try this strategy that I learned, what if I apply this skill, we can have a more successful outcome during the mediation process. So I believe if we keep doing this, we're on the right path, learning from everyone, from different cultures, different approaches, different nationalities. I mean, there is a lot we can still learn from each other.
But Lizyvette, from your perspective, because obviously Venezuela and the US, I mean, you lived in both places, would there be a different approach? Supposing you're in Venezuela, would you be looking at it differently?
Yes, it's very different. It's opposite approach, especially now, because the Venezuela that I knew in the past is quite different from what it is now. Right now, it's so hard for everyone to even express their voices or make their own decisions. They pretty much are imposed what they can do and what they need to do. And in the US is the opposite, is very straight. This is what needs to be done. This is how, and don't look anywhere. Is a little more close mandate. I'll go a little farther than that. I don't feel things need to be done or not necessarily be done in this is the right way, and this is the only way. I don't think it works that way. So I'm happier having an open mind and try to incorporate other ways, take suggestions, take recommendations, and work it out in more effective ways. Again, to better be able to help people and to reduce conflict. That's what we're all looking for, regardless of where you're working as a mediator. Do your best.
Because the important thing finally is that you're looking at a long-term solution. And for a long-term solution, definitely there are lots of other things which we come and go into it. And your role, that's why it's a little more active, according to me, because it's not that, I mean, okay, right now, okay, they're agreeing to it for whatever reason. That doesn't help. It has to be a long-term thing. So that's why I think that becomes important. So Lizyvette, your concluding remarks.
Let's keep working together as mediators because we need each other, and the world needs us to work together to figure out the best approaches and different strategies to help more people, to prevent conflicts from escalating, to reduce violence, to reduce division, to reduce polarization. That's what we see every day, everywhere. And someone has to put a stop on that if we want to think about our youth and how they're growing and what they're learning. And I think as mediators, we have a huge potential to get there, to create awareness, and to, even if it is little by little, but to make a change, to be there and to help each other to reach a more peaceful society, and I mean a global society in general. So I'm happy to be here, and anything that can be done to participate and work together to improve all the ongoing conflicts, I'm there. And I appreciate you are doing this, and it will be wonderful if you can keep working on this. And as much as I can, I'll support you, because this is great.
Yeah, well, you play an active role. I'm just setting up a structure where people play a more active role in working together. So I'm creating that, which I will talk about. Maybe, like I said, now we've been saying on the last day of the conference or after that. But the important thing is, Lizyvette, I was pushing you on the deciding for the parties. You don't have to decide for the parties. I was just catching you to see where you go from there. But I was just putting it down as a situation that, what would you do, Lizyvette, if you had to do this? So if someone puts you in that position, would you say anything or not? So I was trying to get to that point.
Right.
How much would you avoid that? I was just trying to see how much would you avoid that. So they say, no, Lizyvette, you tell us. You don't decide for us, but you tell us what we should do. Would you or would you not? Tell me. Would you tell them?
No.
That's the
I wouldn't decide for them.
No, not decide. That was another word. I was just pushing you there.
I know.
But I'm just saying that if they say no, Lizyvette, what would you do in this situation? Would you say anything or not?
I'll keep telling them. It is your responsibility.
No, what would you do if you were in our position? What would you do? Would you tell them or not? Well, I'm really wanting to know that actually that boundary that people have created. Would they really stop at that? I mean, they say no, look, we'll decide. Decision is ours. But you tell us, what would you do? Would you still keep that barrier between them? Would you draw the line there?
Oh yes, of course.
And if you were in Venezuela, would you draw the line there?
I'll do it, because even if I'm there, if I'm not even allowed to work a mediation session the way it's supposed to be, I mean, I just have to follow my heart and do what is right. So wherever I am, I will still do that.
That's what you said. I think we leave it at that. Whatever your heart says, if as long as you follow that, perfectly all right. Whatever it takes you, but as long as you don't stop that part, I think that's where you should not draw the line. If the heart is saying something and not to follow that, I think then that is an expectation of the parties with you, that you are working from your heart and you're being yourself. Like we spoke about authentic self in that symposium of heart, soul, spirituality. So are you being your authentic self when you do not come from your heart? So we'll leave it at this. I'm not saying we have to have any answers. We'll leave it there. So thank you, Lizyvette. A pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you so much.
And please drop in on the last day for sure.
I will.
Okay, and before that, or any of the sessions, I think the one with Baruch Bush, Transformative Mediation, should be very interesting. So
Wonderful. Yes, I have already watched a few of your recordings, and
yeah,
hopefully I keep watching the rest. It's
no, because
amazing.
transformative mediation, definitely Baruch Bush is someone who you should, I mean, you should be listening to. So drop in for the session if you want to.